present for Liam. I recognised the supersonic scream immediately. It was unmistakable. Lolly-sized scream. I leaped up and saw her standing on the train. Can you remember? They're in the library. He took the dragon very sneakily in his hoodie pocket. And he's gone to research all about dragons. Lollybob's gone too, his sister Charlotte. And he's left Lollybob and the dragon sitting on the train chair at the back of the library while he's gone to research some books. Another child had it clutched to her chest. Oh, sorry, Mrs. Fisher's missed a line out. I leaped up and saw her standing on the train, arms grabbing for the book she'd been looking at, because she was reading the dragon a story, wasn't she? Another child had it clutched to her chest with an equally determined scowl on her face. A lady with a flowery skirt stood between them, trying to make peace with them both. Now then, my little peaches, why don't we have a story all together? I looked around for Mum and saw her coming. She was then coming out of the store cupboard with her arms full of books, because remember, Mum had been helping the librarian. I could see she was thinking the same as me. A story wasn't going to work with Lollybob, not at this point. And I couldn't say I blamed her. After all, the girl had obviously snatched the book from Lolly. I sprinted down there. The flowery lady was insisting on story time and was just about to take a seat, squashing her flowery bottom onto the far too small for it train. Lolly's next scream smashed the sound barrier. It was so striking, it was so loud. And I suddenly saw why. In among the cuddly toys, I spotted a scaly head with two little horns. The woman was just about to flatten poor Flicker. Oh no! In a heroic moment, or maybe it was just the reflexes of an angry and alarmed 2-year-old, Lollybob bent over and rammed the lady off the train like a stampeding baby rhino. There was a screech from the lady as she tumbled forward, and then a crash as the shelf she staggered into went flying. Books scattered across the carpet and the air filled with the cries of Mum and Mrs. Olive as they descended on the book corner to rescue her. While the adults stumbled around trying to help the woman to her feet, I saw Lolly point at the picture book. As I watched, it rose up into the air and it started to fly across the library. Is the book really flying? Or do you think, yeah, Flicker must be underneath it? As I watched, it rose up into the air and it started to fly across the library, banging into shelves and ceiling lights as Flicker, whose wings were making the open pages flap very noisily, struggled to find the exit. The little girl who had grabbed the book stood there watching, her mouth forming a little round O. Why is the little girl's mouth making that shape, do you think? Do you think she's seen Flicker? As she tried to make sense of the flip-flop flapping book above her head. And when Lolly pointed a grubby finger at her, she backed away as she feared she might be next to fly across the room. Finally, Flicker headed straight for the open door. I dashed after the flying book and was just in time to see it smack straight into Liam Sawston's head. Oh no, can you remember who Liam Sawston is? We think he's a bit of a nemesis for our character at school. Sounds like they really don't get on. Nemesis is like an enemy. He staggered on the steps and dropped his bike, nursing the lump that was already bulging on his forehead. His eyes shot to the book, which had fallen to the floor. I bet poor Flicker was just as stunned. "You threw that at my head. I'm going to get you for that." I didn't," I stammered. Honest." I could see Liam's anger growing. I wouldn't have been surprised if his t-shirt had split open and shown green muscles flipping underneath. It was definitely an incredible Hulk moment, and as he hulked up, I seemed to shrink even smaller than usual. He reached forward to grab the book, presumably to fling it back at me. I glanced down and noticed it wasn't moving. What if Flicker was hurt? Either way, I couldn't let Liam find him. I shut my eyes and I imagined myself turning red hot like an ember, like a spark about to explode. And I did what Lolly had done. I became a rhino and I charged. The trouble is, with my eyes shut, my manoeuvre was less successful than Lolly's. Liam just sidestepped and I ended up tripping over his bike and crashing headfirst into a shrub. Luckily for me, he had sidestepped into something squelchy and he landed in an equally undignified heap. "Whatever's going on?" Mrs. Olive cried, striding towards us. She bent down, her hand reaching for the book. My arm shot out really quickly. "Wait!" I cried. It was too late. She lifted it up, and as I sat there with leaves and ladybirds in my hair, powerless to stop her, but Flicker was nowhere to be seen. I think the sigh of relief that came out of me was probably worthy of a hurricane. Definitely enough to knock someone's hat off anyway. "I hope you haven't been throwing my books around," Mrs. Olive continued. If there was one thing that would turn sweet Mrs. O into the worst nightmare, it was mistreating books. This was something Liam had been known to do, so her attention was focused directly on him right now. Unfair, I know, but I wasn't about to start feeling sorry for him. Liam glared at me, scraping what I realised must be dragon poo off his trainer, then grabbed his bike and staggered away down the street. As he passed under one of the trees, he yelped and his hand shot to his head. I could just make out a little flitting shape among the leaves. I grinned. I looked. It looked just like Flicker. It looked like Flicker had dropped a final parting gift on him. The icing on the cake, you might say. What do you think Flicker dropped on him? Do you think it was another dragon poo? Our next chapter is chapter 13, and it's called Slugs and Superheroes.